essentially, if we look at the, let's look at the assignment here. So assignment 1. So if we're looking at this project, essentially what we need is our 3D drawing, our 2D drawings, in sort of a way like this to, I guess, arrange them on the page in a way that makes sense. So I'm just going to go through how I would do that for this here. So what I'm also going to do in this case is I'm just going to make a square at the bottom here. There'll be a stand-in for our plan. So there is our square right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go top, transform, project to C-plane, delete input objects, yes. And that's just making sure it's below on the XY plane, so you can see it's gone down there. So the first thing we want to do, there's a few things we want to do. The first thing we want to do is kind of set this up in a way that we can make 2D, so we have a nice drawing. So we've grouped these two layers. So we have these two layers here, one for the front view, one for the side view. I'm just going to unlock these, and I'm just going to drag these out a little bit, like so. And we just want to make sure they line up. This one here, the bottom view, we can actually drag this down. Since we want to make like an axonometric, so kind of in the style of this guy right here, essentially we're going to want to switch to a parallel view. And Rhino, fortunately, allows us to do that with ease. So what you want to do is you want to click on your view right here. If you're in the Mac side, I think that you have to go to view up here and then viewport or set view, sorry. And then you can still access these same commands. But for the Windows side, you click on this little arrow here in your perspective window. You go to isometric, and you can choose whichever one of these work best for you. So I'm going to try isometric northeast. Somehow I closed the viewport, but that's okay. If you accidentally close the viewport, you can just click this button here for viewports, and it'll bring it back. So I'm just going to go back into shaded. So to cover that again, perspective, set view, isometric, northeast. And now you can see what happens is we have a parallel projection, so that means that all the heights in the vertical direction are going to be proper. You could take measurements off this drawing. All the lengths in the horizontal directions are also going to be the actual length. But what we want to do here is we can now use Gumball to kind of, I guess, arrange our drawing in a way that makes sense. So we don't want anything to overlap. You need to make sure that you're always dragging in line with your original object here. So in this case, we're just going to move it back and forth like so. For this back view, we'd use the green arrow here to move it back and forth. And you just want to set up a view that feels, you know, nice. So in this way, there's no overlaps here. This bottom view, we can drop it down. I'm holding shift and right click to sort of pan around here, because what happens if you just use your right mouse button and move around, it's going to remain in parallel projection, but you're going to lose your view like this. So if you hold shift, it maintains that nice 45 degree angle, and it makes life a lot easier. So I'm just going to go back to set view, isometric northeast, like so. Now, when you're happy with the view you have right here, you're going to want to save it just in case. And this is, saving views are super handy for any render you make out of Rhino. So from really basic axonometrics like this all the way to really elaborate renders done in a third-party program like V-Ray or Maxwell. So what we're going to do to save this view is we're going to go to set view and then go down to named views. So we're going to click that. And you see this little prompt pops up. So there's a few things here. The one thing that we want to really use here. Like you can import views, create using widget. There's animation settings, help, always helpful. But what we want to do is we just want to click this little floppy disk here, save as. And it's going to ask us for a current viewport setting. And you probably want to use something descriptive for this, because if you have a lot of saved views for a lot of renders, it can get confusing. So in this case, we'll call it parallel projection 01. So just hit enter or click OK, like so. And now you can see this little thumbnail pops up. So this is really nice because what you can do is now we can move around, you know, go wherever, it doesn't matter. And if we go back down to our set view tab here, you'll see that parallel projection pops up under named views. If you click it, it goes right back to that view. So that's how you save a view in Rhino. So now what we want to do is we're going to be working with Photoshop and Illustrator to kind of finalize this drawing. But first we need to make a flat drawing to get this into Illustrator, because Illustrator doesn't work with 3D files. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all the geometry that I want part of this drawing, or I want in this drawing. So we'll select all of this. And then I'm going to go to Dimension, Make 2D Drawing. And you can see it's going to say Drawing Layout Current View. That's what you want. You can play around with some of these, like show hidden lines, show tangent edges, things like that. You can also maintain source layers if you've already, you know, laid out maybe light, medium, and dark line weights on these drawings. If you go, so I'm just going to go Dimension, Make 2D Drawing. If you maintain source layers, then those will maintain. In this case, what we're going to do is we're just going to save it to this layer here, 2D Drawing. Current view, hit OK. And depending on the complexity you're drawing in your model, it might take a little bit longer. Just wait it out. But now if we go to top, just going to set my display back to application settings. You can see what we have here is a two-dimensional drawing of our 3D axis. So you can see here it's literally just a drawing of what we had here. So this is really useful. So now we can just jump into this. I'm just going to hide our actual 3D layout like so. So Control H. And now if you haven't line weighted these, now would be the good time to line weight it pre-Illustrator. So in this case, I'm just going to move them all around near to my origin. I think I mentioned this last class. I'll show you guys right now. But if you have this drawing here, this is like one of the #1 things that, you know, people ask about. It's one of the #1 mistakes that happen. If your drawing's way out from the origin, so you can see the origin's right there, and you try to export this, so I'm going to go to File, Export Selected. I'm going to save it as an Illustrator file, Adobe Illustrator. File name, we'll just go Test 01. So snapshot of current view, that'd usually work in this, but usually you're going to want to preserve scale. If you're doing a scale drawing for this project, it doesn't matter. But I'm going to say let's work with a scale of 100 to 1. Okay. So now what's going to happen? Go to our desktop, open this. Essentially what's going to happen is you're going to open this up, and it's not going to be there. And you won't know why. Maybe this is a tiny little version of it down here. It is, but essentially what's going to happen is it's going to be way off the page. So the way you fix that is you just make sure your export is around the origin. So in this case, what you can do is you can just select all your geometry you want to export, go transform move, just click somewhere near the center of this geometry, and then point to move to. You can just hit 0 like that and hit enter. And now you can see that that just moves it towards the origin, and it'll be centered on your Illustrator artboard. So for making line weights, I'm sure you've learned about line weights in all your classes so far, so you know the drill for this. So I'm just going to make maybe some sublayers for this 2D drawing. So new sublayer, I'm going to go heavy, new sublayer, medium, and new sublayer light, and I'll make them different colors just so I can see that I am actually applying these layers. So that looks great. So I'm not really gonna take the time to do the line weights properly, so it's gonna be really just, I don't know, random. So heavy, if you want to really make sure that your design project critiques are about your drawings and your drawings only, make your line weights like this. No one will be able to talk about anything else because it'll look so bad. Okay, so there we go. So our line weights are all done. That looks great. And we're going to export this. So again, we're going to go File, Export Selected. So I'm just going to save over this file here. Essentially what we can do for this is, since we're not really working to scale, you can go snapshot of current view. And that's just going to export without a given scale. It just outputs the geometry. It's fine. So snapshot of current view, okay. So we're good. And now if we open that in Illustrator, so I'm just opening the file, you can see that it's opened into Illustrator. It's nicely centered on the page. And also if we look in our Layers tab in Illustrator, we have all our layers here. So that's good. So we can, just refer them. So the heavy, we can go for whatever style of drawing you want. We can make this kind of light, so we can say 0.75, turn it to black. That's good. Medium, let's say 0.3, turn it to black. And then for our light, we can say 0.1, just a hairline, and turn it to black. So that's great. We don't really have, at this point, we don't have a size of board, so that doesn't really matter. I was telling someone yesterday that you can either do your final step in Illustrator and Photoshop or even InDesign. It doesn't really matter. But what I'd suggest you guys really do is use the program that best suits the task at hand. So Illustrator is a vector-based program, so it's really good at line weights and things like that. It's impossible to do line weights in Photoshop. Likewise, InDesign's the best for laying out things, and Photoshop's the best for raster images. So it's good to kind of bounce through the three programs and use them for what's best. In this case, what we're gonna do is we're gonna maybe draw some dotted lines in Illustrator. You could have done that in Rhino. In fact, I'd suggest it. And actually, I'll do this in Rhino and show you how I'd go about this. But then we'll jump into Photoshop and then maybe InDesign for our titles. So we'll leave that for now, but let's go back into Rhino. So sometimes if you forget something in drawing, or you just want to add something else, what you can do is, I like to just go to 2D drawing. I'm going to make a new layer called dashed line. I'll make it pink. We're just going to draw some lines going from maybe this midpoints here. We know that since this is a 45-45, essentially what we're going to do is just snap to 45. So that's a left angle bracket 45, And, oh, apparently it's not. Maybe it's 30 degrees. Yeah, it's 30 degrees. So we're going to snap to 30 degrees, like so. Just moving these lines over like that. So essentially what we're going to do is we're just going to make some dashed lines in the style of right here. You see how there's some dashed lines, or even in this one there's those rotation lines. So we're going to make dashed lines. So I'm just going to copy these along like so. We are going to make one like this to kind of show the bottom. So you can use Smart Track for this. Again, this is something you're going to want to finesse a little bit more than we're doing right now. But, oops. Okay, so that's good enough for this. And then, you know, we'd have some that, I'll snap to 30. We'd have some out here as well. Like so. Okay, and then of course maybe I'll just like trim these so there's no overlap. So in this case I'm just going to draw a line, so you know, maybe like this, just really rough, like so and like so. So I'm just using this line to trim away certain things. So I just use trim right there. I'm gonna trim away all that. We don't really need it. I'm gonna trim away that one there, and also we want to trim away all this stuff. So you can either, when we export this layer, you can either just eyeball it, or another thing you can do is use some reference geometry. So in this case, I can just join these, change the layer to dashed line, so change object layer. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all the objects on the dashed line layer, so select objects, and then we can export this again. So file, export selected. We'll just save as test2. So again, snapshot. I'm going to open that in Illustrator. So we just have these pink lines here. I'm going to copy it into the file we were just working in. And now we have a way to kind of align these up. So I'm just going to scale it up like so. And that's fine like that. So I'll just delete that one line there. And now with these dashed lines, again, they'll you can select them by line type. So in this case, if you lose the layer when you paste into a new layer in Illustrator, you're also able to select one line, go to select, same appearance. It'll select the other ones like that. And now for our dashed line, we'll make it black. We'll make it 0.1, and then we'll make it dashed as well. So that looks fine. So there's our dashed line like this. Your line weights, since we'll be looking at the screen, maybe you want them a little bit darker than this, but that's about how you do this. So does anyone have any questions about exporting to Illustrator and whatnot?
How do you export like only the hidden lines?
Okay, only the hidden lines. So if you want to make hidden lines, so let's just go back to our geometry here. So I'm just going to hide this right now. I'm going to unhide our geometry here, like so. So this is a good reason why you want to save your views. Make sure everything lines up. So if we want to restore our view, let's go to Set View, Parallel Projection 1. We're going to select all of this again. Actually, we only have to select this because this will be the only object with hidden lines. We're again go to Dimension, Make 2D Drawing. And then what we want to do is we want to say show hidden lines here. So we'll click that. And then you'll see that all of these different options come up. So hidden lines, hidden tangents, hidden clipping planes. And what we're going to do is we're just going to maybe make a new layer here first. So new layer, hidden lines like this. And we're just going to save them all on that layer. So again, I go to Dimension, make 2D drawing, turn on hidden lines. So hidden lines will save to hidden lines, hidden tangents, save to hidden lines, hidden clipping planes, save to hidden lines, hit OK. And now what you get, if we look at this drawing, is we have our hidden lines here. But if we change the color of them so they're, let's say, light gray, you can see that the hidden lines export onto a different layer. So then you just export this in the same manner that we did for the other one. So in this case, maybe I'll do this quickly. I'll export a snapshot of this. So File, Export Selected. So let's call it Test 3. So snapshot. I can close this. I'll open that Test 3. And now you can see again we have our layers. So if we go to layers, I'm just going to make this bigger right now. If we go to layers, we can select the hidden lines layer. Let's set it to 0.1. We can actually make this a little bit lighter, so maybe we want to make it like 80% black or something, like so. And to make dotted lines in Illustrator, what you can do is you can just set your dash to be 0.1. Maybe we want to make this bigger. We'll go like 0.3 for our weight. You make your dash the same thing, so 0.3. And then you make sure the caps are rounded. The gaps will go 0.5 points. And then now let's look at what we have. So you can see we have these little dotted lines here. Maybe we want to make the gaps bigger because they're kind of blending together. So this is the kind of thing you can, you know, finesse in Illustrator. Rhino does have line weighting tools, but you don't really see them in real time as much. And it's great for making like a construction set of drawings, but for presentation drawings, Illustrators will give you really nice results. So any other questions with the Illustrator stuff? Perfect. So we'll just leave that open for now, but we're going to save this. We're going to keep this. So the other thing you can do here is let's go back to our parallel projection view. So again, I'm just hiding those. If you've lost your view, just go back to Set View, Parallel Projection. And this is where you can start to have a little bit of fun with all of this. So in this case, let's say we wanted to make, well, we'll just start making kind of like a render here. So in this case, let's set our view to rendered, like so. We're making sure in our display, our background set to the solid color, which in this case is white. So we have that awesome looking block there. This is actually one way. So I was working on a really big file, so I set my anti-aliasing really low. So just in case you want to like make this look slightly better, or you want to speed up your Rhino's performance, you can always go to View, and then in OpenGL at the bottom there, anti-aliasing, you can turn it on. So I guess 4 is actually okay. So just sort of an aside there. So what we want to do anyways, if we render this, is we're just going to work with layers. So we want to make sure we're on rendered. If you are in rendered, if you want to start playing around with materials or anything, this is where you'd add them. I had a few people asking about materials over the weekend. Feel free to use them. They're in the Rhino manual. It's chapter 11, somewhere near the back, so just look that up. A quick thing, if you just want to change the color of something, so this cube here, if you go to Properties, click on this little paint tube. If you go to Assign Material by Object, now you can choose the color of it and everything, if you so wish. So we can make this in our tradition of making this the ugliest looking project ever. I'll make this orange, blue, and white. Go Oilers. Okay, so anyways, that aside, what we're going to do, you have this set up, you're all good to go. What we're going to do is we're going to go hyphen, always remember the hyphen, view capture to clipboard. The reason why you want to go hyphen is whenever you put a hyphen in front of a command, that's essentially telling Rhino that you want more options. So a lot of views, or a lot of commands, even hyphen copy, it's going to have more options. For the most part, you don't have to worry about them, but hyphen view capture to clipboard is really necessary. One thing before I go through with this, there's another command. If you're working in Mac and your Rhino is on the PC side, Photoshop and everything is on the Mac side, what you can do instead of view copy to clipboard is you can go view capture to file. It's going to give you the same options, except it's going to save a JPEG file, and then you can transfer that over to your Mac side to continue processing your image. So in this case, though, we'll go hyphen view capture to clipboard, hit enter. We're going to see some view capture settings. So in this case, the width and the height by default are going to be the dimensions of your viewport here. I would leave it as default because you can get some unexpected results if you sort of play around with this. What I would do, though, is to scale it up as large as you need. So one nice thing about this is if you scale it, you know, let's say, well, we'll just scale 5 for this. Rhino will calculate how clear the image would be if it were 5 times as big. So as a result, you'll find that your images that you output actually look nicer than the screen. Make sure your draw grid equals no, world axis is equals no, C-plane no, and that's just going to give you a blank background. So scale 5 or however big you need it. So it's going to multiply both of these by 5. I'll hit enter. And then if you are doing view capture to clipboard, it might look like it hasn't done much, but if you open Photoshop, we can move that down. If you just open new, you'll see that actually the size of the new document you're going to open is actually the size of the object on the clipboard, which is in this case the Rhino file. So you can click OK, and then you can simply go paste. So edit, paste, or Control V, and there is our output. So you can see it is higher resolution than the actual screen. Now this is where I start to have fun with things. So, and feel free to, you know, play around with this. So in this case, let's add a few layers in here. So for example, if we want to go to pen, we get this view here. Now, don't use pen for your 2D drawings because that's not part of the assignment. We want to see line weighting, vector drawings. In the future, always use pen if it's like not a final pinup and it's not like a good drawing, because it's actually a really useful tool and it'll save you a lot of time. It'll make it look like you made beautiful 2D drawings and you didn't. So essentially you can do the same thing. So view capture to clipboard. Make sure your scale's the same, and of course your width and height are the same. And in this way, it's just going to line up perfectly when you copy it out to Photoshop. So all this looks good. Hit enter. Now we can simply just go back into Photoshop, go edit, paste. You can see that we have our line drawing. For something like this, I'm just going to want to go to multiply, and now you can see we have this black outline. Another thing I actually personally like doing is inverting this. So with this layer here, you can go image, adjustments, invert. And now essentially what you can do is you can set the transparency setting to screen, and it gives you this nice white outline. And for me, I actually find that the white outline is kind of a little bit less visually imposing, but it still adds definition, and it's just nice. What you can further do is, let's say you want those hidden lines again, you could go to wireframe. Again, set your display to solid color. Make sure it's white. Again, run the command view capture to clipboard or view capture to file. Hit enter. Make sure your scale and everything's the same. Enter. Now, when we paste this in, we have our wireframe. I'm also going to invert this one. You can just leave it like this, whatever your preference is. I'll go to screen, and maybe I'll decrease the opacity a little bit. And now you see we have this nice drawing that, you know, looks much better than what we got in Illustrator. And it's a raster image. So if you really want to play around with this, you can start doing some other things as well. Like, let's say you want to have a ground plane. So I'm just going to make a big plane like this. So surface, planar curves, like so. So set view, parallel projection. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to shaded mode. I'm not going to cover this too much. You can look in the Rhino book. But if you do want to do something like this, you can actually start looking at the lights. So you'll see the lights are up here, or else they're going to be under render tools. So all the lights here. But you can just create, let's say, like a spotlight, like so. I won't even really go through the settings here. If you want, again, this isn't necessary, but if you're interested, go for it. So you can see now we have this, you know, super moody spotlight. Maybe let's put it like this. So that looks fine, and actually that doesn't look fine. I'm going to make it bigger. So what I'm doing here is I'm just going to go set view, parallel projection. So that looks nice-ish. It's good to layer. So in this case, we don't want the materials. We just want the shadow. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select everything. And then I'm going to go to Properties, Material, Assign by Object. I'm going to switch it back to the default material like that. And then again, view capture to clipboard. Make sure everything's the same. Hit enter. And now what I'm going to do in Photoshop is I'm going to go edit, paste. And I'm going to set this layer to, we could try soft light, or we could try hard light, or we would probably just use multiply like that. And then we're going to reduce the opacity quite a bit. So let's reduce it to like 40, and I'm actually going to put it beneath the line so the lines still stand out quite a bit. So maybe I'll increase the opacity of our hidden lines. And now we're starting to get something that's actually looking like a, you know, finished, presentable render. So this is the kind of thing you can do with Rhino. And you'll notice that we haven't actually at this point made a render. We've just been using Rhino viewport captures and you know, playing around with Photoshop a little bit. And this is the way I'd go, to be honest. If you haven't seen it, there's this really good site called visualizingarchitecture.com. This guy, Alex Hogrefe, and he uses SketchUp, but a lot of his tutorials are really applicable, because one thing I really like about him is he doesn't rely solely on, you know, just V-Ray or whatever, but he still makes really beautiful renders. And he, you know, he has tips for like 6 tips for a perfect sky. So this is just like a really great site to go to. So once we have this, then what we want to do is we want to add in our other drawings. So let's say in this case, we're going to go into Illustrator. We have our other drawings here. We're going to select them. We actually might want to make these darker. So let's go to layers, our medium layer. We'll set this to be like 0.6. Our light layer we'll set to be 0.3. So we have these layers. I'm going to select all. I'm going to copy. In Photoshop, you can copy vector objects straight into here. Paste is a smart object, so that way as you move it around, it's not going to lose any resolution. It remains a vector object, so now we can scale it up. And what we're going to do is we're just going to line this up. And so like so. In this, like I might not do it perfectly right here, but just take the time to, line it up properly. That, for this case, looks pretty good. So place. Yeah, that looks good enough. And then what we're going to do, once we have that, we can rasterize this. So rasterize is layer. So now it's a raster object. Do you guys know the difference between raster and vector? Okay, so now it's a raster. And then what we can do is we can just erase these. So we can just erase these curves, or else we can just use the lasso tool to delete the curves we don't want in this. So like so. Delete, select, deselect. This guy here, to kind of go with our overall scheme, maybe I'll see how it looks inverted. You can't see it, so let's not do that. So I think this looks pretty good like that. So you can see how it's gone from kind of a simple drawing to something a little bit more developed. I'm going to crop this. I just want to see, did we say, A1 size? A1 size is, does anyone know off the top of their head how big A1 is? How much? Or whatever.
It's like 33.101 by 44.6.
Okay, well, I'm going to say this is close enough. That's impressive, though, that you guys know that. So I'm just going to crop this. Image, crop. Perfect. So I'd save this, save temporary files. So in this case, we want to maintain the layers. So we'll say, project 1, Rhino, whatever. So we're saving the Photoshop file. And now in InDesign, we're just going to go in. So, and again, you can do the typesetting in Photoshop and Illustrator, but I personally think it's a good idea to get into the habit of using the programs for what they're meant to do. So we'll create a new document. So in this case, we'll set the page size to be, let's pretend this is A1, like so. And then now we'll just place our file. So you could also save this as a JPEG. You can see that the resolution is pretty high, so that's nice. We're just going to bring this down. And again, you'll want to take into consideration the actual size of everything when you're laying it out. So in this case, you don't want this where it just kind of goes up like that. Although even this, we can fix this. Have fun with your layout. So in this case, we can just be like, oh, okay, that doesn't work. So let's put our info bar down here. Let's make it something that matches the rest. That's too vibrant blue. We'll make it more this peacock blue, lower the intensity, like so. If you're feeling lazy, use Helvetica Neue. Maybe all caps. So primitive hot if you really want to, you can say, have a cool subtitle like a visual analysis of contemporary tectonics and their application in 3D modeling. Don't actually do that. But, you know, like, let's face it, that's like most architecture project names anyways. So we'll do this. And then it would be good also to label your views. So there we go. So this would be minus the title is, I'd say, would be minus the fact that this is a cube, but this would be, you know, a successful project. So just put little view titles there. So that is a way, and this is even with that shaded view and everything, it's maybe even a little bit more complex than most people hand it in. But I think what I want to show you guys with this, that it's actually really quite easy and convenient if you just save views, view capture to clipboard, layer things in Photoshop to get this kind of refined diagram and everything. So I hope you use this both in this course, but also in Studio and everything. So that, does anyone have any questions about that before we switch to the next thing? Perfect. So I'm gonna resume. So essentially what we're gonna do is we're just gonna cover a few basics in surfaces. First, I'm gonna sort of talk about the differences between solids, which we've mostly been working with, and surfaces. And then I'm going to make I was thinking about it this morning, and I'm gonna make I don't know, kind of landscape and bridge. It probably won't be beautiful or elegant, but we'll learn some things from it. And then next class, what we're going to do is, again, it's going to be going through making a precedent. So in that case, I'm going to do a super fast Herzog and Demeron bird's nest of Beijing in one class to sort of show how surfaces can be really useful and you can model complex things actually fairly quickly. So, why is this here? That's okay. But anyways, so what we're going to do is first the difference between surfaces and solids. So just to review this. So this here is a solid. It's an extrusion. I'm going to go to shaded. So you want these, if you're wanting to 3D print, you want to see closed. If you explode this, what you're going to get is you're going to get 6 open surfaces. So in this case, you can see that it's flat. So these are infinitely thin. So if you want to 3D print, you're out of luck with surfaces. Surfaces, however, are great for modeling in the computer, making renders. There's a lot of reasons why you want to work with surfaces rather than just solids. They allow you to make more curving forms. They allow you to do lots of neat stuff. But they do, you know, have limitations as far as digital fabrication goes. So with that, what we're going to focus on is just using them, and then we're going to see closed surfaces. So we're going to make like a poly surface from surfaces, and also we'll just make surfaces that remain as surfaces. So for this, I'm just going to draw out maybe what I think is the top of our bridge. So again, this is not going to be very structurally sound. More so, this is just to show you how you can make more organic geometry. So I'm going to draw this curve here. I just used the control point curve right there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to offset this. So I'm going to go curve, offset, offset curve. And you can see here, like we saw before, you know, the distance, you can edit it here. So in this case, I'm going to go distance maybe 50, because that one looked pretty small. So there's 50. So that's the top of our surface there, like so. So I'm kind of thinking of this as our bridge deck. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw 2 lines at the end of this to kind of close our bridge deck, like so. And I'm going to maybe offset these again to make the sides of our bridge. So what I'm kind of imagining is a bridge deck up top, and it's going to taper out a little bit like that. And then we're going to cut out some cool shapes out of it. So in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to again offset these curves. So we're going to curve, offset, offset curve. We don't want to offset as far. So let's go distance 20, like so. Distance 20. I'm just going to right click to redo that command, like so. And then this is good enough for what we want to do. So I'm going to grab these top curves here. I'm going to join them. So I just click join the puzzle piece there. I'm going to click out the top view, and I'm just going to, with the gumball, pull this up. Of course, if you were working with, you know, predefined topography, or if you were just designing anything, you'd want to know your height and everything. For this case, we're just kind of learning how to work with surfaces in a basic way, so we're just kind of winging it here. But we're going to define these as the bottoms of our bridge curves and the top here. So under layers, maybe I'm going to want to make a new layer, call it bridge curves, just so we can keep track of this. So bridge curves, like so. And then I'm just going to select these and change it to bridge curves. So change object layer. Now, you can see this stepping on the curve. So this is what I was talking about with anti-aliasing. Since this file won't be that big, I'm just going to turn this back. So if you want to do this, increase performance or increase how nice your Rhino screen looks, you can just go to File, Properties, View, under OpenGL. So you can see anti-aliasing is none. You can turn it to 4 times or 8 times. I think 4 times is the default. Hit OK. And when we make surfaces, this should look a little bit better. So just a side note. So we're going to make sure they're on the bridge curves layer. Let's make that blue. So like this. So we're going to work with control points now, and we're going to do that to, in this case, make some topography. We're going to make like a river. So what I'm going to do for this is I'm just going to draw a big rectangle, like so. And then one way to make a surface is to go surface. So all your surface commands are under the surface right here, or else they'll be right here. So we're going to go surface, planar curves. So now you can see what we have here is one big surface. Now, one thing to point out is that it has these crosses across it. What these are called is they're called iso curves. So you can see if I go to display right here, if I turn off surface iso curves under the display settings, it'll turn off these inner curves. What these iso curves define is the points on a surface. So essentially what happens in Rhino with any surface, like the way that in Illustrator a curve is defined by control points, or in Rhino a NURBS curve is controlled by control points, surfaces also have control points. To see the control points, you can hit F10. I'm not going to hit F10 because it actually stops the recording of this. So instead, I'm going to go to Edit, Control Points on. So you can see here that in this case we have 4 control points. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So these are on the edge. So with these control points on, essentially what we can do is we can start playing around with the surface. So we can pick these up. We can move them around like so. But with only 4 control points, we can't do much with this surface. So what we want to do if we want to make some topography from this surface is we actually want to increase the amount of control points on this surface. So in order to do this, you're going to go to Surface. We're going to Surface Edit Tools. And I never do it this way. So instead of this, we're just going to go to the actual surface tool. So if you go to your surface tools right here, or if you want to, you can go up to your surface tools up here. There's a little icon, or else you could just type rebuild surface, but there's a little icon of a guy hammering a block. Essentially, this is what we want to do. So we want to click on this rebuild surface. And now what you're going to see, what comes up, is you're going to see the original U and V count. So what UV count means is it means the number of faces within this surface in any given direction. So you can think of this as U, this is V. So in this case, you can see we're increasing U to 8. So we're going to have more in this direction, more in this direction. What really matters right now is that if you increase these, you can see that the complexity of this surface is increasing. You just want to increase these to a point where you have enough curves to make whatever kind of object you want. So one thing to note with rebuilding a surface like this is, I guess it's easier to demonstrate, but when we have more control points, so I'm going to turn control points on again. So I rebuilt that again. It's, you go this little icon of a guy hammering a square. You can also access it in your surface tools right here. Essentially what's going to happen if we go to edit control points on, or just hit F10, what you're going to see is that if you remember how we picked up this one corner and we had this nice smooth like rise in our surface, since we have more control points, if we do that now, you're going to see that it's only going to affect this one little area. So in this case, all the control points around here, they're just going to stay flat. But that's good for the case of topo, because in this case what we're going to do is we're actually just going to move this topography, so this surface, rebuild surface up. I'm going to turn on project and planar. I'm just going to move it up to the level that we have this bridge deck that we designed there. I'll turn on my int snap as well to just find the intersection, like so. And then now what we're going to do is we're just going to make a, I guess, riverbed sort of thing. So I'm going to turn on control points again. So edit, control points on. And I'm just going to make a winding river by kind of selecting some control points like this. Maybe it gets wider. So let's, probably should have made that bridge bigger, but that's okay. The river very conveniently narrows right there, which is great. So like this, and you can select control points the same way as other objects. So, but now you can see when we lower this down, we're going to get a nice river like that. So essentially what we're going to do is we'll lower these down to, let's say, just above the base of our bridge right here, like this, because we're going to trim some things away. So you'll see that here's our base right here. So we're just going to lower it down to this point. So that looks good. If you wanted to edit the topography more so, you could make, you know, a hill up here, or, you know, whatever you feel like doing. So in this case, though, we're saying this is our little river down here. So does anyone have any questions about doing that and editing surfaces with control points?
Feels like
Oh, yeah. So to rebuild a surface, so I'll just rebuild this surface. So I'm just going to hold Alt and Gumball drag it over. Again, with any surface, you can't do this with poly surfaces, but with any single surface, if you go to your surface tools right here, you're looking for this little rebuild surface icon, or if you're in your standard tab, if you go the side, so your surface options are there, hold it so this menu pops up, again hit rebuild surface. It's going to ask you to change the point count. So I'll actually show you guys, you can actually bring this down, and a lot of times what this is going to do is it's going to smooth out your surfaces. So sometimes it's nice to reduce the amount of points in a surface to smooth something out. So the point count, once you're happy with how it looks, you can hit preview to update your preview, hit OK. And so now you can see we have less control points here than we do here. If you want to edit these points, again, you can hit F10, or else you can go to edit control points on. And then you can just move these around. So these points behave the same way as any other object in Rhino. So if you wanted to, you don't have to just move it with Gumball. You could always go transform, move. If you have point snap on, so we're looking for point here, you'll see that we can snap to that point and move it however we want. It's good to kind of, I don't know, not get too carried away, because you can start making like really weird intersecting surfaces like that. You know, like this surface has stopped making sense at this point. So just watch out for that. And I'll actually show you guys one other interesting command here as well. This is really great. If you want to dive back into two-dimensional drawings, you can use this command called contour. So we're selecting this surface here. If you want, you can always go to curve from objects, and then contour. And this is such a great command. So contour. So essentially what you're going to select is you're going to select the base of your contour. You can just select somewhere right below your geometry. So direction perpendicular to contour planes, hold shift, pull right up. And then the distance between the contours, in this case, let's go 20. Hit enter. And then you can see here, we have a really nice contour drawing that's in 3 dimensions. The other nice thing about this is if you ever want to make a file for laser cutting, so a stacked topography model, this is a super easy way of doing that. So I'll do that again so you can see. So essentially you'd model your terrain, you'd figure out the depth of the material you were going to laser cut. So again, go to curve from objects, contour. So the base point, you want either the very bottom, so we could go to quad here if we want to find the lowest point. If that doesn't work in this case because the control point, just go somewhere beneath it, it doesn't really matter. Pull up, perpendicular, distance between contours 20, that's fine. You can, increase or decrease it. You can get really tight in the contours, like I'll hit 5. But if you do go super tight like this, you can see that it does take quite a bit longer. So just be careful with that. You want to keep in mind what's going on so you don't crash your computer or whatnot. But these make great contour drawings. So you can see in here now, we have this contour drawing that actually just looks kind of cool in its own right, like this in 3D view. So that is kind of the benefits of using control points. So we have our control points there, but now what we want to do is we want to make this bridge. So in this case, I think what we're going to do is we're going to select these bridge curves. I'm going to make a new layer. So this layer here, I'm going to call it topography. So new layer, topography, like so. And I will make it green. So change object layer, and this will just be nice to turn it off and everything if need be. Another thing I'm going to do maybe, actually it should be fine. This will be a really ugly bridge, but that's okay. So I'm going to make the top of this bridge. So I've selected my curves here. Again, to make it a single surface, we can go surface, planar curves, because this is planar. And we'll have our curves right there. So that's good. And now what we want to do, we're going to go through a few different commands that we can use for working with surfaces. So the first one we want to do, I'm just going to turn off this layer so we can see this. The first command we want to do is sweep two rails. So in this case, what it does is I'm going to explode this. So I'm just exploding this just because we want to sweep the sides here. So we want to sweep across here and we want to sweep across here. So what you can do, you need two rails and you need guide curves. So in this case, what we're going to do is we're essentially going to draw a line from the end of both of these curves like so. I'm going to turn off smart track because we don't really need it. Same with int, quad, near, point. Maybe we'll keep mid on. So I'm just drawing lines at the end of these two curves, like so. And now we can already, you know, in our mind's eye, kind of see what we want here. And Rhino will more or less do this if we give it enough guide rails. So in this case, we're going to run the command. So surface, sweep two rails. So select first rail. We're going to select this upper curve. Also note that you can select surface edges. So in this case, you see like the little pink line. It has these arrows up there. Essentially, that's saying it's the curve that's on the edge of that surface. So you can select that as well. So I selected that one. Select second rail. We'll select this bottom one. And then select cross-section curves. You want to make sure that you select these in order. Let's say we add a middle one right here. You wouldn't want to go 1, 2, 3 because it's going to mess up your geometry. You want to go 1, 2, 3. So in order. So we'll just select first, the second, hit enter. And now you can see we have this nice flowing surface here. Usually you want to hit do not simplify. That's going to lead to more robust geometry, less likely that you're going to have gaps in your geometry, less likely you're going to have problems. You can mess around with these options. I'd say for the most part they're not super necessary. So in that case we'll hit OK, and now we have this surface here. Another thing to mention with sweep two rails is we can actually have some kind of, you know, strange things going on. So we don't have to draw straight lines across here. So what we can do is, let's say we're drawing a line across here. So let's go to the midpoint of this line up here. So midpoint, I'm going to go to perpendicular, and this is going to find the straight line across these two curves. So the perp curve. Essentially what we're going to do is in the top view, I'm going to copy this curve. So I'm just holding Alt and dragging out with gumball. I'm going to rotate this curve, so transform rotate, so that it's straight against the YZ axis. So the reason why I'm doing this, the reason why I'm rotating this is if we look in this view right here, regularly it's on a slight angle, so it doesn't really give us an accurate drawing. But what we do right here is if we rotate it, then in this view we know that we're looking right at it. And then what I'm going to do in the right view is I'm just going to draw a weird bulbous shape like that. So looking back in our perspective, we have this weird bulbous shape. I'm going to move it back to our bridge like that. And then I'm going to rotate it so it lines up with that original curve we drew. So transform rotate. So rotate from there. I'm going to hit project, rotate it like that. And then I'm going to delete these curves because we don't need them anymore. And then again, I'm going to draw the two end curves. So turn off project. Like that. And then we're going to sweep two rails. So let's go to surface, sweep two rails. So first rail, so the rails are the thing that you're sweeping across. We can go surface edge. Second rail, the bottom one there. And then cross section curve. So now we have three. So we can go 1, 2, 3, hit enter. So do not simplify again. And now you can see what we have is this nice transition between these three curves. So Rhino's actually really good at doing this, at making fluid geometry like this. So essentially what you're going to want to do is like figure out what kind of shape you want beforehand, and then just go and, just draw it in cross sections and sweep across. That's a good way to do it. To make the base of this bridge, what we're going to do is I'm going to show you, actually I think we'll just cap this. So what you can do now is you can just sweep two rails again. So I'm going to draw two lines down here. Actually, I'll show you another command. So I'm just drawing two lines at the end here. So we're going to use another command to make a surface called edge curves. So we can go to surface, edge curves. So select 2, 3, or 4 open curves. So we can select 1, 2. So we can select surface edges even with this command. 3, 4. So you can see that makes our bottom surface there. So I'm selecting all of our surfaces. In surfaces, you don't use the Boolean union, Boolean difference, Boolean whatever with these. You use join. So in this case, I'm selecting all the surfaces. I'm going to hit join, so the little puzzle piece. And you can see now up here on your command line, it says 4 surfaces or poly surfaces joined into one open poly surface. You can see here type is an open poly surface. If we want to close this, and we know that we have planar holes, so holes that are just on a flat plane, you can simply select your open poly surface, go to solid, cap planar holes, and then you can see created 2 caps resulting in 1 closed poly surface. So this is a super useful tool. So now this is a closed poly surface, and what that means is it can be 3D printed, and now you can successfully use the Boolean difference, Boolean addition tools like that on it. So if we turn back on our topography, you can see here's our wonderful bridge. Maybe what we need to do is we need to now cut out a hole here so water can actually flow through. What I'd do for this, since we have this intersect here, is we can actually cut this with this surface. So with surfaces, you can cut them. So one way to do this to make sure surfaces meet up is I'm going to select this surface here, so our bridge. I'm going to hit split, and then it's going to ask me to select the cutting object. So in this case, I'm going to select our topography. So enter. And now you can see what happens. I'm going to hide our topography again, is we have 2 poly surfaces. So we have the bottom one, and we have the top one. So I'm going to select the bottom one and just delete it, like that. So I'm going to delete that, delete all these extra curves. If you try to do the solid cap planar holes, it'll say unable to cap one object. The openings do not have closed planar loops or edges. And that's because, of course, this is not planar. So to actually do this again, we can use the command sweep 2 rails. And we don't even have to draw any curves here to do this. So in this case, we can go to surface, sweep 2 rails, select the edge curves for our rails, hit the end curves for our cross-section curves, hit enter, hit OK, and now when we select all those, hit join, again you can see two surfaces or poly surfaces joined into one closed poly surface. If we turn our topography back on, you can now see that the geometry fits perfectly within our topography. Again, since this is now a closed poly surface, we can go back to using our booleans. So in this case, it's much easier to just, let's say, draw what we want to be the opening of the bridge. So let's just draw something like this. I'm just going to draw this curve like so. Make sure it goes fully out without outside the bounds of this geometry. So I'm going to join these curves to make a closed curve. And then I'm just going to extrude a solid in both directions. So we'll go solid, extrude planar curve straight. So you're probably familiar with this command from project 1. So I'm going to extrude them both sides like that. We can delete that curve. And I'm going to select this poly surface, go to Boolean difference, which is underneath the Boolean commands there. And then delete input, yes, because we don't need this big chunk of geometry there after this command. Tap the difference geometry, hit enter. And now we have, if we turn on our topography, a nice bridge that actually spans. So I guess what we'll do is a rail, because we should look at more surface commands. Also, for the record, my own personal projects are never as horrible, the ones I do in class. I hope you guys don't think I have like a penchant for just like stupid looking things. So we have our bridge here. This is looking good. So some other commands that would be useful for this, and we'll cover more next class, but I'd say we can look at loft, because that's another simple one. So loft, essentially it's going to give us, so actually here's how we're going to do this. We're going to make kind of a weird surface on the side. So I'm just going to draw a rail like this. So like this. So this is going to be our cool rail. Essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this little swirly thing here. I'm going to rotate it so it's kind of fits with the deck. So what I'm doing is I'm just going to rotate it. So transform rotate from this point to this point, just so it's parallel with the end of our bridge like this. And then if you guys remember that command, array along curve, we're going to use that. So we'll just take this little command here. Also, I'm going to scale this up because this looks way too small. So scale 2D. This is just a tiny little footbridge, I guess. Actually, we want scale 3D. So transform scale 3D like this. We're just going to array this along this curve to sort of play around with loft. So we're going to go transform array along curve. So select path curve, so this curve here. And we're going to just choose the number of items. So let's say 6 will give us a good amount for a loft. We want to go to road-like. And road-like, essentially what it does is, I was kind of explaining this yesterday, it essentially will take your curve and always turn it so it's in relation to the curve as it was when it begins. So in this case, it's always going to be perpendicular to the curve no matter where it is. So it's going to ask you click a viewport to choose a C-plane. We're kind of, this curve that we're arraying along is flat in our top view, so we want to select our top view. So we're going to click there. And now you can see what happens is we have these curves which extend along this curve. So to loft, you don't need a rail. In this case, I'd actually sweep one rail, but let's look at loft, and then we can use sweep one rail as well. So loft, the other thing you can do too is these curves don't have to be the same. So I'm going to edit the control points. You can edit control points of curves as well. So control points on, we can just go like this to kind of, you know, make it wacky, something different. So I'll just edit these two control points on. So I would suggest that you play around with these. They can lead to really interesting geometry. So there we go. Not safe, but that's okay. So to loft, you just go to surface loft. So select curves to loft. This one you need to choose in the proper order, because look, if I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, what's going to happen, you can see, is it's going to make all these intersecting curves. So we don't want that. So make sure you do it in the right order. So select curves to loft. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hit enter. Now you can see there's different options. So right now I have on straight sections. Probably it's going to be normal by default, and you can see we get this nice flowing curve like that. So that looks pretty good. You can also try some of the other ones, like developable. Loose is one I use sometimes. So that's, as it implies, just kind of a little bit softer. I'm going to stick with normal for this. So preview. Okay, so there's our one rail for our bridge. If we look at our topography, that looks pretty neat. On the other side, I'll show you sweep one rail. It's more or less the same thing. We're going to make this a covered bridge, because why not? So I'm going to draw another crazy curve like this. So again, I'm just using control point curves for all these. I'm going to go the end point here. I'm going to draw something that goes out like this. So I'm just hitting enter to end that curve. Again, I'm going to rotate it so it's perpendicular to the contours of the bridge. So I'm going to go transform rotate. Just like so. And then I'm going to array it along this curve. So, and actually, one thing I am going to do, because it came up yesterday, and I think this would be interesting to a lot of you maybe. If you don't just want one surface, but you want lots of, let's say, smaller wooden planks or whatnot, pipes, more components, essentially what you could do here is I'm just going to grab some circles. So I'm going to draw a circle like this. I'm going to array this circle around this pipe. So I'm going to go transform array. Maybe I'll make these a little bit bigger, like so. So transform, that's too big. Okay, so transform array along curve. So this curve here, I'm going to click here. The number of items, I'll say, are 8. So that looks good. Good. And essentially, I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm going to select this. So I'm just rotating this. Now, what I'm going to do with all of these, I'm going to array these along this curve in the same manner that we did for this side. So I'm going to go transform array along curve. We're going to select this curve down here. We're going to go road-like. Again, we're going to bring open our top view. So OK, click a viewport to choose a C-plane. We're going to click into top view. Now we have all of these. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use two commands. I'm going to use loft for all of these circles here. So I'm going to go surface loft. Now you're going to see these arrows like this. You want to make sure that they're more or less in the same way. If one of these was pointing down, let's say, you might get into some trouble. For the most part, these look all right. So we're going to hit enter. You can see we add one cross over here. So that's fine. If you do see this, go to align curves and then just play around with these until it works out. So in this case, we might have that little twist there. You should be able to drag it. If that doesn't work, just rerun the command and then look for what went wrong. So in this case, you see how I'm kind of aligning this. So I'm kind of moving it so all of these curves are in the same place. So I choose that. You can flip the arrow by clicking on it. So that's going to be a lot more in line. So now when I hit enter to loft, you'll see it doesn't do that anymore. So normal, align curves, okay. We have the end of this. You could go through and do this for all of these surfaces. For our case, I'm just going to maybe make this one. But if you want to make this, like have this tubular top, you could just go through and do the same process. Again, you can always try solid cap planar holes. So you can see created 2 caps resulting in 1 closed poly surface. But the command we want to do now for the other side is sweep 1 rail. It's the same as sweep 2 rails, except you only need 1 rail. So let's go to surface, sweep 1 rail. So select rail, we're going to select this curve down here. Select cross section curves, we're going to select these curves across. So again, you want to select in the proper order. I'm going to hit enter. And you can see that we'll go sweep 1 rail. We'll go freeform for this. Again, just play around, see what looks best. Freeform looks good for me, so I'm just going to stick with it. Go OK. And now you can see if we go to rendered view, oh, it looks like we might have had a cross over there. That's okay. You'd fix that in your model. We would now have this horrible looking bridge in a barren topographic place. So does anyone have any questions with that? If I delete all the curves, so I go select objects, actually I can just turn off the display for curves if we don't want to see them. But you could use this as the base of a rendering. So does anyone have any questions about surfaces? We're going to cover them much more in next class. This is just kind of a introduction if you want to use them on your first or even start with your second project. No? Okay. Well, in that case, did you make the Google sign up?
I did, yes.
So we're going to be sending out the Google sign up right away for project 2, so keep an eye out for that. And just email us if there's any problems with that sign up or you want to choose something else. So that's it. Thank you.